Okay, as most of you probably know, John's kind of in the hospital right now, so you get me instead. The purpose of this meeting is to, we've had all the initial budget review meetings, and we had it with the Board of Selectmen, and we had with the Selectmen. This is after the Board of Finance has gone through and listened and gone through the budget. There's been a series of follow-up questions, and so the purpose of this meeting is to go through the follow-up questions. Okay. Do I need to see any alternates? Is everything? Let's see. Is Brian? Okay. Okay. So who do I have? Okay, right there. We're done. That's easy. Okay. And okay, so I guess the first thing on the agenda is the assessor. Why do we want to listen to the assessor? Remind me. I know who the assessor is, but welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
On. So I just want to give a wrap-up of where the 24 grand list has brought us to this point. We did see, as Mr. Manville says, a flat grand list, unfortunately, this year. Not to say that we don't see encouragement and growth in the years to come. What is occurring this year, we definitely saw, if you can just scroll that up a little bit, Betsy. Scroll it up a little. This year, we saw a dip in our commercial. We had a court case that was resolved, so that's why our commercial went down. However, we do have, as you see, our industrial went up, and that's the storage buildings that are going up next to the library, so that's definitely a positive for us. We also saw the decrease in the motor vehicles, which we hope that there will be a resolution at the selectmen meeting for them to vote for from an 85% depreciation to a 90% depreciation. That will give us an increase in our grand list of approximately $19 million, which will then offset the mill rate for those of us here. I think we can go to the next slide. This is just a 5-year grand list comparison as it relates to motor vehicle, personal property, residential, commercial. You can see that in our residential, we have had some new construction that went up this year, about 29 houses went up in the last year, so that definitely drove our residential grand list up. I want to say that the benefit of the permitting system that we have right now enables us to track a lot of the permits, as much as cleanup permits that have been open for years, to make sure those are closed. So not only is it just new construction, but definitely renovations, remodel, and outbuildings, pools. So we're really tracking that through the permitting system, which helps with our residential increase. I think you can scroll up. And that's just our new construction over the last 5 years. Right now, we currently have 12 new homes that are being constructed. So obviously it's not complete, but those are carryover incomplete homes from last year. And we do have about 5 or 6 that are coming up as well. So again, we're tracking forward with new construction. This is our motor vehicle. You can see that we did have that decline. Some of the decline is not only in the valuing of our motor vehicles, but it's also that with the new legislature, we've taken trailers and some other vehicles off our grand list, so the number of vehicles we have is less. Right now, we're also, nope, you're fine. We went, the valuing is now MSRP, so it's the original price that you pay for the vehicle. So we are tracking that, not through our department, but so before, where we used the NADA book value, and it was, that value would change over the year. If you have a 2018 vehicle, you purchased it in 2018, we're taking that value and it's depreciating over time, and it will go down to 15%. There's something important, I think, that we all need to realize too. When we start the grand list and we look at our grand list, we have our gross assessments, and then we have a lot of exemptions that are taken out, which reduces it. When we put our grand list together, it's based on our net value. So these are just some of the exemptions for all the categories that occur over time. So, right now, one of the new programs that is run for 100% permanently disabled veteran, we have, they get free taxes. So the town has to compensate for that in its grand list as well. And along with that, we have our homeowners program. We have 370 participants in that, so those are people eligible based on their income. And that program is going on right now. But these numbers are based on last year because that program is still current, so we don't have those numbers for this year. And that the town also pays for as well. What's our next slide? Personal property. So within our department, we obviously track all businesses in the area. In order to do that, we not only get trade name certificates from the town clerk's office, we also download files from OPM and we track any new businesses in the area. We send out a mailing to those businesses. Now, all the businesses that are put on by the state are not technical businesses. A lot of them are LLCs that purchase real estate and have different just purchasing power, but they don't physically have an office within our town. But we have added continually over the last several years, any businesses. We track them, and obviously, for the businesses that come in, we do have businesses that close as well, but we do a lot of tracking in that, keeping them current. Do I have anything else? That's it. Are there any questions?
Can we go back to, the very first page?
Oh, Tom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my main question first is, I've sort of been under the impression that the grand list is relatively flat overall the last couple of years. Is that true?
In the last couple of years, yes, but however, in the year of reval, we did increase our grand list exponentially because of the values of real estate, especially Heritage Village real estate, all the values of homes. Where we stand right now, the purchasing power of the people and the selling power of everybody, the homes are still not overvalued, but they're still selling higher than we have them assessed.
Mm-hmm. And the commercial part of it, how much did?
We don't have any, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of commercial that is selling in the area. What we do have are some of the commercial condos that are selling, especially the condo units that are by the high school. A lot of those have turned over and new people have purchased in there.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no commercial construction going on right now. We don't have any.
Okay. And do you have any sense about how our grand list, over an extended period has increased relative to towns around us?
We've stayed in, if we're looking, it's interesting about Southbury is because we're in New Haven County, and then Woodbury's Litchfield County, and then Fairfield County is Newtown. And so if you're looking, there's three different counties, thank you, thanks. We're three different counties in this area, so, but we're relatively the same in growth in the same towns. Nobody's beating. If you're going to look in Middlebury, right, they have a lot more commercial that's going up in comparison. If you're looking in Newtown, they've got a lot of new construction going up, and that's in regards to a lot of apartment buildings and condos that are going up there as well. And of course, they have another corridor of commercial business that taking down with the old and putting up with the new, where we don't really, obviously on our main street, we don't have that going on. Do we want that to go on? Yes, but there is just no property right now on our main street corridor.
Okay.
Tom,
Yeah.
question. When do you expect the diminution from the fact that IBM has moved out? And my understanding is that there will now be probably a court case regarding where the town will have its assessment the owner will come in, obviously, with his own assessment. And my understanding from what I've heard is that there is a significant difference between the two. What do you expect the impact of that change? Because when I look at the budget, I look at what the increase in the budget was versus what the increase in the grand list is going to be, and how is it going to affect the tax base. So what do you expect, what type of a hit do you expect to the grand list once this IBM situation is settled? Because my understanding, the courts many times just come to the middle and say that's the way it's going to be.
Right now, we are in discussions with IBM and their, attorneys right now to come, to hopefully resolve, to come up with a beneficial cost. They don't want to list the property with the taxes being so high and with the building being empty, but we're currently in talks right now, and I'm sure that Mr. Mandler will keep you abreast as that arises. Another fall in our personal property this year is an $8 million deduction between Kyndryl and IBM. Kyndryl was the other main facilitator within the IBM campus. So this year, their personal property declarations was negative $8 million between the two of them.
Okay, but what, for IBM, if they settle in the middle, how much would the grand list go down?
It's,
May-
I don't
may-
know if it's.
We can do the math, John. What in these numbers is the IBM number?
We can't discuss that right now because it is a court case, so it's not
We can't
beneficial for
discuss
us.
their current,
Correct.
But you can't give us?
No, because we're still in the appraisal process for our side of the ticket. So we have their appraisal, but right now it's not beneficial for us.
I'm not asking about the appraisal,
No.
but
But
what
in order-
what has the valuation been on the grand list? Isn't that
It's been $73 million,
73?
But that's
And
not
that's
assessment.
real estate and personal property?
No, that's just real estate,
How much is the personal property portion?
just about 10 million.
So about 83 million in total right now is IBM on the grand list.
Yes.
Okay.
And John, just so you know, when we were building out the budget, we had, we don't have a full understanding yet of what the impact is gonna be, but in just a rough estimate, it's gonna be about 2 to 3/10 of a mil.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
No, I like this. It's good work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is
If
it-
anybody would like any of this, I can forward it to them.
Yeah, no, I definitely would. Okay. And does anybody else have any questions? Let's go back let me just go back one more time, though, to so you have the 5-year sort of grand list? You had sort of a multi-year, yeah, that one. And you don't have like totals, do you?
Oh, I think on the next page.
Next page?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, no, new construction. Oh, I don't have the totals of each of the years on those 5 years, but I can get those for you.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, going back to the first page. So, again, your sense is that from 2020, it's gone up, but it hasn't gone up the last few years. Is that correct? The total-
Correct.
The total?
Correct.
Okay.
You can see the reval jump under residential on 21 and 22. That's why it jumps 50% right there.
What?
We also
The
had the
resident.
benefit of, and I hate to say it's a benefit, but of COVID, because new cars were not available. So the value of used cars went up considerably, which also impacted our brand list. I believe it was the same as the COVID year. Is that right, Darcel, when the
Yes.
cars went up the same?
Yes, from the 228 to 241 million. Yes, so there was an increase there as well. But everything, right, and
But just eyeballing, it looks like everything except residential, 22, 23, 24 has been about the same, except vacant, what's vacant?
so vacant is open, it's open land that we have
Uh-huh,
that's just not developed at the current.
okay. And it's,
But we have seen in personal property, it's just with the businesses that we are bringing in, they're smaller based businesses. The Gyre 9 was probably one of the largest, maybe business that had been brought in here, but other than that, a lot of medical has been brought into town, but every time one medical facility or building or imaging centers comes in, a different one leaves, so they're like, one's coming in and trumping the other, so every time we gain, we do lose one, but the progression we have at least held on to the businesses in the area, and we are occupying a lot of the space that is currently there, but they're just smaller based businesses right now.
May I ask a question? Why did apartments go down from 2020?
Oh, well, we did have, Kevin Bennett, he did take one of his buildings down, but then rebuilt another building, so it might have just been that transition.
Huh, okay, thank you.
The Board of Finance spends a lot of time with departments forecasting future needs.
Yes.
Have you ever put together a forecast of grand lists moving forward, or
No,
been
I
asked to?
haven't, but I definitely can be productive in doing that for you over the next year, moving forward to the next year.
Maybe at some point, that might be
not at some
something
point,
we'd
I think
like
I think
to,
it's a very good idea
to
like
think
review,
about,
review on a regular basis.
Sure,
because this is such an important part of
absolutely,
We've
I'd
had-
like to be in
of
more
our
discussion.
revenues, and therefore our mill rate
Right.
and
I mean, we spend so much time on the cost side.
Yeah.
That's as much time.
I
as-
realize in discussing that I did have, I don't know if I missed a slide, but on the personal property side, I think it's the last one. The Board of Finance actually, well, not gives, but allocates $15,000 a year towards our budget for audits. And not only do we reap the 15,000 back, but the last is audit results over the last 5 years and how that's come. What we do currently over the last 2 years is that we do cluster audits. So we go towards like businesses to make sure everybody's on the same page moving forward. I'm using an example of chiropractors we did last year, so all the chiropractors were part of an audit. So we're looking at those, making sure like businesses are valued the same and what do they have. When those audits occur, the next grand list happens and we make sure they're following suit in what happened in the audit. We're not re-auditing, but for a year we are to make sure they're doing their due diligence and moving that information forward.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that.
And what's this, like, I remember we saw at one point a list of, people haven't paid, right?
Yes.
How's that going?
That's going very well. We work closely with the tax department to make sure we're aware of who is not paying, who is not filing. So those people that don't file every year and pay their bill, we look at them closely too. So what happens when a business doesn't file, they get a penalty. They have a 25% penalty. So what occurs is that penalty sticks and they don't have any depreciation, so that value actually is higher the next year, and that holds until they finally come in and fill out the paperwork with us and we say, this could
So,
be less.
But in aggregate, are we cutting into that number more? I mean, like, I'd like to, I guess.
No, we are cleaning up some of the not older, but smaller companies that they get a tax bill in the mail and they don't pay it and it goes on for 2 or 3 years and they say, never had this business. So they prove, we don't just take it off the books. They have to prove to us when the business closed, get the proper information, but then that does come off the books. But it has been accumulated, so we are cleaning up that mess in the process. Mr.
And-
Michaels, the first year I started, we had a big talk and we allocated, because every business just was in as a business, but now we have, if you asked, how many pizza places do we have that, how many medical, how many automotive, we
Now,
have a
this is much,
specific list.
I really like this because this is, I think, much better reporting. And I think this is what we asked for a year or two ago, and you're getting there really well. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Whatever I can do to help this process.
Mhm.
And I learn in the process as well, so I appreciate any information you guys can share with me.
Okay, all right,
Thanks.
great.
Tom, if I could, just if you, Betsy, the slide previous with, I think it had all the categories.
It's for the yellow one.
No, yeah, the yellow or orange.
It's on the top.
The very first one, I think.
Yeah, I just, and I apologize if I misheard, but I had written down, I thought you had said earlier that the hit to personal property between IBM and Kyndryl was about 8 million. But then when I see that IBM decrease and Kyndryl,
So-
10.8,
Right, what happened is Kyndryl literally last week just refiled. We said we would keep theirs open, so these were numbers pre-grand list, so I should have adjusted that after.
it is in fact 8, and so it's less of a
Yes.
hit than what's up there.
Both IBM and Kyndryl filed 0. And we said no, my staff and I, we went back and we said, no, we were in there in June, you had, technology, you had furniture and fixtures in there, it's not a 0, so please take a look at it and refile it. So at least we do have some money on the books this year from them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else for Tressa? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kevin, I guess we follow that up with you.
I didn't realize that more than the Board of Finance was gonna be here, so I don't think I have enough for everyone of this. So, um,
Does
So-
Betsy have this or not? Do you have this, Betsy?
who's that? I have one, I have one for her, yeah. So, good afternoon, I guess still, right? I won't go through this whole thing, because obviously it's long, but at our last meeting, you may recall, I was asked a question, and honestly, when I came to the meeting that night, I thought I was just here to talk about my budget and nothing more. So I felt a little off guard with the question because it was much more broad, right? It was more speaking to my role and the Department of Economic Development and its, how it's measured. And so what I felt I should do tonight, if I may, is give you a broader picture of the measurement of economic development as the commission, as well as my role as the director. So at the top, I have the mission of the Economic Development Commission listed there, just as a reminder to support and foster a strong local economy for the town of Southbury by attracting, promoting, retaining, and engaging businesses. So when I came into the role in 2019, as you know, I was the first economic development director for the town. And as we all know, Southbury is a beautiful town and a beautifully well-run town and beautifully planned town. But there were some that felt that Southbury was, and I'm not saying it was or wasn't, but there was a perception by some that it was not business-friendly. Okay, so one of my earliest roles in coming into the town was to try to change that perception. And part of that is by being the liaison, the concierge to the business community so that they feel that they have somebody inside town hall that is, listening to them, helping them understand the process. Every town runs differently, so as a developer comes to town, they need to know and learn the ins and outs of how the town works. Okay, so a job like mine is to interact with land use closely, understand the process of land use, building, zoning, fire, health, the whole 9 yards, and then make sure that the business that's applying for these positions or for these spots understand how we operate. Okay, so it's not designed to skirt around it. Or cut corners, but more or less hold them as well accountable to what they need to supply to fulfill their permits. So that was one of the first things I needed to do, establish the department, establish that, this one-stop shop, was here, and try to work with my colleagues in all the departments, including Darcel and assessment and IT and all of our departments, have us all work together. As you know, I'm not a manager of any employee. I'm a one-stop shop guy. But it's important to my job to be able to have cohesion and work well with my colleagues. And that's what, over the last 5 years, I've definitely tried to do. And one of the byproducts of that is a business community that does feel that we are business-friendly at this point. It's taken time, but, and as I said, it's not necessarily that we weren't, but a lot of it is perception, okay? So we established the department. We have an array of resources available. Began this sort of concierge approach. Got some new zoning regs done in the beginning. Just got going really right out of the gate, and of course, then the pandemic strikes. During the pandemic, my role shifted a bit in that I couldn't physically be present, obviously, so I became what I like to refer to as communicator-in-chief. My main role during the pandemic period was to keep the business community informed of the constant changes of information that was flowing in from the federal government and the state government, the PPP loans, et cetera. And I became the person, at that point, I was literally emailing and connecting with the business community on a daily basis through email and social media to let them know what the changes. And it got so much to a point that they depended on it, that they literally were like, look, we have our head down and we're just trying to do business. And we just wait for your 6 o'clock message to just update us on all the changes. And then when I heard that, I was like, wow, now the onus is really on me to keep doing that. And I did. One of the things we did during that period is do a business survey out to the business community to find out what their pain points were. Those pain points then led to communication webinars that we conducted. The town formed a long-term recovery committee. Dan and I were co-chairs of that. The one metric of the pandemic, I will say, is that we remained flat, okay? And a lot of businesses and business communities were shuttered during the pandemic, and Southbury was resilient. Certainly not all due to me, but I'm just saying, that is something we definitely can hang our hat on, that, a business would go out, a new business would come in, a business would go out, a new business would come in. It was mentioned earlier today about the online permitting system and how that system has helped us on a revenue standpoint. When I got to town, we did not have an online permitting system, and had gone to the IT director before Dave and asked about it, and he said, oh yeah, it's in the budget, we just haven't implemented or moved forward with it. And I asked why, and they said there's just a lot of folks who would be using it, departments who didn't really want it to happen. And so he goes, so I just haven't moved forward. But I said, well, you know what, we need to move into the 21st century, we need to get this done. Assembled a group of us, leadership in the town, got the green light go from the first selectman, and basically it was sort of like, okay, well, you mentioned it, so, you take charge of that. So we we formed a small committee that evaluated and vetted a system that we eventually launched. One of the things I will say about that period, that project, besides it being about a 9-month project, was that any company that we were approaching, if I said to them, can you bring us online in a quarter, within a quarter from the time we signed the document, and the ones that said no, we bypassed. I said, we're gonna get this done in a quarter. And knowing that part of that to happen had to be what we were doing on the inside. And at that point, we decided, Dave came in, Dave Richards, and it just took a lot of pushing to get us over the finish line, but we pulled the trigger and we did it. And it's bumpy. Anybody that's brought an online system knows how bumpy it is, but as people got used to it and got workflows going, I think it's been a success. Other things that just kind of fell into the bucket. The thing about economic development is, because it's sort of hard sometimes to define, is that it kind of becomes the catch-all at times, and not just in Southbury, but in a lot of communities. And so when we were in a sort of a turmoil of turnover in land use with our land use administrator position, things that normally would be handled by that position sort of came to me, because I was the consistent throughput. So that meant bringing the affordable housing plan over the finish line and on time, which, if you know anything about that, that's a 5-year window that we had to do it, and it got squeezed literally right up to the dated June 30th, 2022 was when it was, those 5 years were up. Similarly, that led right into or overlapped the POCD. The POCD, a year-long project, working with the Planning Commission, working with SLR, our consultant, One of the happy byproducts of that is that because of my interactions with the commissions, zoning and planning, is instead of just seeing me as the EDC guy, instead of just seeing me as the guy who comes in and advocates for the businesses, now they saw me much more as a peer, because I was working with them on that POCD. And I was determined with that process to not just be in a vacuum and it just be a planning commission only centric document, but we involved like 15 at least or more different departments and other commissions and committees to participate in that process. So it was we had input across the board. We formed the Southbury Chamber. That was a big deal. We closed the Southbury Business Association after 52 years, a voluntary organization. And, at my strong push, not solely, but certainly with some others, we got the Southbury Chamber formed under the Waterbury Regional Chamber, and I serve on their board of directors. The EDC formed the Subcommittee of the Arts and Culture in 2022, and that's significant because within a year and a half or 2 years, it's been so successful that now they've branched out and they are now going to be a 501c3 and stand on their own. The Sustainable CT has been an enormous effort, working with Sustainable Southbury and lots of other partners to be certified in 2022 and 2024 with Sustainable CT. That comes along with grant money that as part of that. And this, I wish John were here, and I hope he's doing well. John's got a lot of great ideas, and so one of his ideas was, hey, we got this anniversary coming up next year of the town, 350th. I think maybe that sounds like an economic development thing. Why don't you do something with that? And so we put together a small steering committee. Justin's part of that, and if you participated in any of it, it was a year-long event, things going on every single month, 35 events in all. It was a massive undertaking. And it cost the town very, very little because we figured out how to raise money using other sources such as the Southbury Historical Society to help pay for a lot of those things. And it was across the board participation with Parks and Rec and Southbury Land Trust and the library and many other partners. So that was a juggernaut thing that we did. For promotion, we did the Southbury Radio Hour. These listing of business ribbon cuttings and new businesses registered are actually much smaller than what you saw, I think, even on the screen with Darcel, and that's because, as she mentioned, people register with the state. You're required to register with the state, but when it comes to LLCs and DBAs, you're not required to register with, it's not a law that you register with the town. So those numbers, I think, would go up even higher. Right before the pandemic, we did some in-person small business series. Then the pandemic shut us down, so we relaunched that last year. And just other ways to be nimble. And I brought this up more for John, but when the flood happened and everything went crazy, the Southbury Friends of the Library really needed some help and some space. And I only mention that because when I reached out to the spaces that we got, they got a space at the Southbury Plaza and they got a space at the Gyra 9 headquarters. It's about relationships. At the core of what I do, it's relationships. And if I pick up the phone and I call a plaza owner or a building owner, who has 40,000 square feet, and I say, there's a need, they say, what do you need? How much do you need? And that within a day, these things were achieved for the library. Because that's the biggest takeaway I can give for my position is building relationships within my colleagues and the town to get things done as inexpensively as I can, and building relationships with the business community. A whole lot of things that I do outside of the town, but it helps put us on the map. I won't go through all that. But it is all about representing Southbury, the quality of our town with integrity, and that is a part of what does attract businesses to come here. One metric that I have on here, we took a look at our fire marshal has some software that he keeps, and we determined that the current occupancy rate for our town commercially is 94%. So that's a very high number. Most towns are not above, have at least a 10% or more vacancy rate. And then if you get into the cities like Hartford and New Haven, et cetera, it's much, much higher. It's like 30 to 50% vacancy rates. You saw the grand list numbers. I included them here. So yes, there's as was seen, there's a dip in the commercial, an uptick on the industrial. You know, when Gyra 9 came in with that 40,000 square foot space that was Romatics, that thing was a disaster before they took it over, and an enormous amount went into the fit out and improvement of that building. I included some census data in here from the Naugatuck Valley corridor, in part really to actually show, at least according to this data, that our population decreased, which is kind of seems counterintuitive to the numbers you showed with the housing. But anyway, it could be. I also included in here, besides the current assessments, just our top 10 taxpayers from 2022, top 10 taxpayers of this year from 2024. But let me move on now to what you really called me here to talk about, which is the future, right? So I listed out actually more than 10 opportunities for grand list growth. And before I address it, let me just say that, you know, our occupancy, if we filled every single one of our plazas, right, filled every hole, every nook and cranny, it really is not going to move the needle on the grand list. I mean, yeah, there may be some additional personal property depending on what they have, but it's really not going to make much of a difference. It's about building growth. And as Darcel mentioned, there's nothing at the moment being built. So there are some things coming down the pike, but what there is more of is opportunity for more building growth. And that's where I'm putting down these opportunities here. So one is probably the most famous, and the one that is, if I had a nickel for everybody that asks me and calls me about, I would be a rich man. And that's 970 Main Street South, which is essentially the corner, right, across from the Travel Center, across from the Sacred Heart Church. That you know, is business zoned, and then it abuts more business zoning and manufacturing zone, M zones, all the way up that Main Street South corridor, you know, heading up to Gyra 9. You know, I think we all know that's prime real estate. So it's an opportunity, and you know, sometimes it's just a matter of the offer being good enough to get somebody's attention to listen. So I consider that something that actually could be worked on. IBM we've spoken about, but that is kind of really also risen right to the top. We are in talks with, as Darcel said, with their, she's in talks, they're in talks with the attorneys, I'm in talks with the real estate broker who's been charged with the IBM property. And they've done this before, it's not their first rodeo, they've had many other giant corporations that they have handled, including Bristol-Myers Squibb and Aetna in Middletown and others. So they know what they talk about, and sort of the bottom line is if the town doesn't rezone it in a fashion that will make it marketable, then it won't go anywhere. It'll just sit there. So to help start that possible process happening, the Planning Commission has already brought it up on their meeting that they're going to commission a study of the property to see what the market will bear, and see if what that study comes out with is concurrent with what the broker thinks. But you know, that's a major factor in what happens with IBM, is how it gets zoned. Because right now it's zoned to be what it is, this commercial, this corporate headquarters, which it's not going to be anymore. You know, there's no corporate headquarters out there looking for a building like this. And there's, like I said, there's numerous examples across the state of other corporate headquarters, similar sized property, similar terrain, et cetera, that doesn't move and eventually has to come down. The other giant opportunity we have is the town-owned property, sometimes known as Volpe Rosen, sometimes known as the Southbury Corporate Park. The town's had it for 20 years. It's 204 acres of raw land. An assessment that was done 20 years ago determined that it was about 50 acres of buildable land, which is a lot. You could do a lot on 50 acres of land. There's no infrastructure there. There has been interest in it over the years. You know, I reach out to companies, hey, would you be interested? They reach out to me, I give them information. It really needs to go to the next level. Years back, the Board of Selectmen, I believe, had authorized that we can put it on the market. So have had some conversations about suggesting we do just that. So, actually, do I have that in my?
Kevin, if I may, just on Volpe Rose in a minute. You know, a lot of these things like IBM, we don't have town money in it.
Right.
Volpe Rosen, the town 20 years ago, paid $7 million for that hill of rock, okay? In today's market, today's value, 20 years ago, if we paid 6 or 7 million, it should be worth 15 million today, okay? 8, 9 years ago, there was a task force that made a recommendation. We have a member of the Board of Selectmen here that was on that task force. And 8, 9 years ago, we made a recommendation that it be listed. And to come to that recommendation, we brought in a whole bunch, and you weren't here yet,
Right, right.
but we brought in a whole bunch of commercial real estate brokers, okay?
Yeah.
And they told us nothing's gonna happen until you get somebody that's got a financial interest in making it move. And you should list it. You should bring in a broker, you should list it, you should get something from the outside saying, what can we use it for? Okay? Now, 8 or 9 years has passed, and nothing has happened there. And now I see tonight, and I'm sorry, you know, I'm on a soapbox, but now I see tonight, we're still thinking about putting out an RFP.
Well,
And,
there's
you
a-
know, and on top of this, we got the Stevenson property that has significant value potential because it's very close to the middle. And what are we doing with that? I mean, this is not only economic development, but this is trying to get back all of the taxpayer money that the taxpayers already put in there and a thing. And, you know, when I first came to town, I went and I looked at all the appraisals. And they bought it without an appraisal. There was never an appraisal, okay? And when you look at it, you're right, only very small parts of it are really usable. But the thing is, if we want to make it move, we've got to do something to get someone in here and start the process, because nothing is going to happen until we get somebody who has a financial interest in finding somebody for us to do that. So I just bring that, but it's a lot of town money, and let's say we can somehow get back 5 million. Look at $5 million and what it would do, and how much of the town budget for a whole year it would cover.
Right.
Okay, so I've said my piece.
John, if I could,
Appreciate it, Jen.
I think some of this conversation is not for us. I think that our focus really has to be what's on the budget, and I hear everything that you're saying, but I wanna know how that fits into the money that you're asking for this year. And I know that there isn't a huge change from last year, but it doesn't mean that all of this money should be going to EDC still. I heard you talk a little bit last time about the promotional and the advertising, and a little bit about where those things were going. I'll be honest, I'm still a little confused, because I know that there's a big emphasis with economic development about what it sounds like keeping business owners happy. And you were able to do that with some seminars and workshops and outreach, so I understand that cost. Though there was a link on EDC website, through the town website, for free seminars. It was a nonprofit out of DC, forgive me, I can't remember the name. Was it SCORE? Was that what the name of it was?
SCORE is one of the entities that, they're national actually,
Okay.
but there's a local chapter too, that offer, yeah. So oftentimes, towns will partner with them. I'll use SCORE, I'll bring in SBDC, as Women's Business Development Council. They're people that offer business counseling advice.
Sure,
Yeah.
and not to say that the seminars and workshops aren't important for
Well, they're
business
also part,
owners
they're
in
part of
town.
it. They're often part of it. In other words, you bring in subject matter experts and offer it. One of the ways it's free to the public to hold these is is, in this case, a bank pays for the food, and we're using a public building here, so there's no cost for the venue, so.
I mean, one of the items under promotional was, forgive me, maybe I'm mixing up with advertising, but it was essentially promoting Southbury business in a Southbury magazine, and that's confusing to me.
No, the magazine has no cost. Everything that's in that Southbury, well, actually, it depends on what magazine you're talking about. If you're talking about this-
Southbury Neighbors.
If you're talking about Southbury Neighbors, there's no cost. Everything that's in there that comes from me is given for free and received for free. There's never
So
been
not
any-
one dime of EDC money is going to Southbury Neighbors magazine?
Correct.
Got it, okay. Where else is the money going? I know you mentioned Voices, there were ads going in Voices.
We had ads going in Voices, much more of those on a regular basis through the 350th efforts that we did. But, I mean, a lot of it hasn't been spent. And in part of having the promotion and advertising money allocated really ties back to what John's saying, which is taking a piece, if we want to take a piece like Volpe Rosen, and we want to market it, there'd be a cost involved to it. And if we're doing it, particularly if we're doing it ourselves, if we're going out and getting a broker, then the onus is on them. Of course, then you pay on the back end if they actually sell it. The tricky thing about getting the broker is we have to be willing to sell it. It's like, it's one thing to secure somebody's services to go do something, but then if they go do it and they bring you a buyer, depending on how open we are to actually doing that deal, we need to work out, and I think this is one of the reasons why it hasn't been marketed, is we have to work out our willingness to sell that land. Because a lot of people are not, what they're scared of, what they walk away from, is if they think that if something's narrowly zoned, or in some cases, so broad that it doesn't fit a need. If it's not tailor-made, people look at it and they go, oh, it's raw land. Okay, the town's not offering to put, anything in. None of that is pre-set up. A lot of those things really need to be decided ahead of time before it's marketed, because it's gonna make it, frankly, marketable.
Yeah, I get that, but
Yeah.
I'm back a little bit in John's, camp here, is you don't find that, you try it. Like, somebody tries something, all right? Would somebody just try something finally? Because we've heard about it, and we've heard about it, and we've heard about it for years and years and years. I'd say try anything. I don't care if we look like idiots now and we sell it for half of what we bought it. It's still, it's still maybe $1 million or something, right? And at least we know why it's $1 million. It's just that, or don't try it and fish and cut bait and say, we're not trying it because, well, gee golly whiz, all the people on the other side of the hill don't really want to sell this land. They really want it to sit there and be nice forever, right?
Right.
But I feel like we've got to, for some of these things, we just got to fish or cut bait to find out, don't we? I mean,
Yes. No, I agree. And I think, part of why I wanted to show all the other stuff is been focused on a lot of things, and I'm just one person. And I think to your points that there's a great deal of tension in the moment, let's say, right, on the grand list, on the budget, because we are facing budget challenges. And so frankly, what I'm saying is there's no time like the present, right, to do what you're saying, try whatever we can do
Right, and I
to move the
think
needle
so,
forward. And these are just some of the opportunities to do that.
Again, first of all, thank you for, I more than anybody realize a lot of the things that you've done, okay? I've been involved with a lot of the things that and if your title were Head of Cultural Development in this town, you're doing a great job, okay? But also, when you first were hired, I think we sat and we asked you and say, well, in grand list terms, how do you measure your success, right? And again, I think you kind of evaded that answer a little bit, and that's fine, I guess, because I've seen, like, a lot of things came up where you did some other things that I think are valuable and that you highlighted with all the stuff. But we've kind of reached the point where either we should change the name of your title a little bit, or you should focus on this stuff, I think. I mean, that's,
Well,
that's.
what I said then was that you can't in my opinion, if, when I got here, I said, if you judge me on the grand list, that's not a good measurement. And the reason I said that simply was because there's a lot of factors that are out of my control. I'm not saying that I'm not willing to continue and, like I said, do the things I'm talking about to try to move the needle. They're very specific, targeted approaches, but there are certainly factors that are out of my control when it comes to grand list growth. And part of it is just how much, as we've said, the grand list needle is going to be determined in part by the available land opportunity. So yes, obviously, this is the biggest parcel available and it's town-owned. So that's where the opportunity lies, okay? I have a lot of other things on here that are obviously smaller, but,
And obviously, the IBM negotiation is important.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I still, is this the number one privately owned? I've always thought that was.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
it's-
yeah,
It's
yeah.
privately owned. And so there's nothing we can do about that, right, until,
No, what I'm suggesting is, no, you don't have to just wait till it goes on the market. If there's interested people in that thing, I can certainly bring it to people's attention and see if they're interested in
right,
selling it.
okay. But,
And they have said as much. I mean,
and, again, I, for one, and I applaud all the things that you've done, but right at this point in time, I feel like, particularly on the Board of Finance side, and maybe it's not our call as much as it's Board of Selectmen call, that we'd love you to focus on this, right? On trying to do anything you can to up the grand list, right?
and frankly, part of these things are gonna take tools like, and I have on the last page, under plan, not only the study done for IBM, but also, looking at rezoning the property, consider rezoning Volpe Rosen, establishing a TIF district. We did that exhaustive tax incentive proposal, or not proposal, but, deep dive that Ann and I and the EDC did. A lot of tools available in that toolkit, and
Well, again, so
the
like,
TIF district is
I
something we
guess,
could do.
from a Board of Finance perspective, I'm saying, we'll invite you every month if you want to come and say, this is how we try this, or this is how we try this on these kinds of things, okay? Because that, again, it's reached kind of to us, it ought to be your highest priority now, okay?
I hear you.
Okay, all right.
Tom, could I have a word?
What?
Can I have a word?
Sure.
So, to back up a little bit, to Mr. Riley's point, we were told by the brokers that we need to find out what we want to put there, zone the property for it, and put it on the market. And the Board of Selectmen voted to do that. And it has not happened. So I think you're barking up the wrong tree, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay.
There's one person that can make that happen, and he has refused to do it to this day.
My comments have in no way reflect anything negative about what Kevin is doing.
Yeah, Kevin's
reason I
doing
brought
everything he
this
can
up
with the
is
tools
this-
that he has.
Well,
You know,
I mean,
this
maybe,
came up-
again, maybe he's caught in the middle, but
Yes,
I guess what we're
This came
saying,
up with rezoning and so forth, with approval to do that a long time ago. And whoever is, we at the Board of Finance just look at this and we try to plan forward and look at what's happening forward, okay? There are some people and there are some boards here that are action boards, okay? If the Board of Selectmen said we ought to be doing a rezoning study, and it's not being done, then is somebody following up with that? Because my concern here is it's not only the grand list number, which will at least give us a bunch of increased tax, but I want to try to recover that 6 million that's now worth whatever that the taxpayers put out at one time under an assumption 20 years ago
well, I
that
get
we
that.
would get it back, and we've already paid off all of the money we owed on it. We borrowed the money, we paid it all off.
Well, I feel like the biggest problem with Volpe Rosen, I don't know, again, Justin probably knows better than I do, but my biggest problem with Volpe Rosen is we'll get 3 million back, but I would take the 3 million and run right now if I could, and hopefully whatever shame we have from overpaying at that time is done. Who, I don't care, everybody's, whoever did that is long gone, I hope.
But
But
we should recover what is recoverable, or at least work toward doing that.
I will make a commitment right here, right now, that this will be a priority, or if not the priority.
Right.
And,
And I'd like to, and part of the reason why, we like to have Darcel here, right, is, we'd like to, besides having the concrete budget discussions we have about the cost side, we'd love to be having same kind of concrete discussions about growing the grand list, okay? And would love that to be really your focus, I guess, going forward. Or as best you can. I mean, I'm not your boss, and I'm not telling you, so you gotta work that out with your boss, and if he says no, okay, he says no. But from a Board of Finance perspective, I feel like that's where we'd love to see more focus, okay?
Kevin, quick question, sorry. With what is going on, we're reading in the paper at the Timex property in Middlebury with the distribution center basically not wanted there.
Right.
Have we reached out to them to potentially let them look at the IBM property or get them connected with the broker at the IBM property?
No, I have not. Two things on that. One is that particular, not to say that that's not a good idea, and I will do that, but it's a smaller, footprint than this would be, frankly. Now maybe they would be happy to expand their vision, if they came to one of our other two properties, whether it's Volpe Rosen or IBM. There probably would be an interest. That the party that is actually proposing that project is still, hidden. It's secret. And I have talked to an entity that I thought was it. Let me just say that, and they said it's not us. So, but yeah, I mean, sometimes, one town's quote unquote loss is another one's gain. Although it is interesting how much, I will say, there was a lot of, I was approached a lot in town, here, our town, to please squelch that from happening there. And I was like, that's really not, my job to do, to kill somebody else's project, because they felt it was gonna be adverse to our town, given its location.
Well,
So.
and I'm perfectly satisfied, too, I am, in a certain way, if you go to Volpe Rosen and half the town comes out and screams they don't want to do anything with it, okay? But again, the not knowing, and it's sort of being lost in la land is harder than
Right.
one way or the other, right?
You'd rather know, yeah. And here, and yeah, it has everything, obviously, all this is subject to public desire, because it's a town-owned piece of property. And
Yeah,
so it's
right.
gonna be subject to all those,
Right, but I think the only way we're
processes.
gonna find out about it for so long is if we really, ready, ready, shoot, aim.
Right. Now, I don't want you to think that I haven't had any talks about that property with anybody, because there have been, serious looks at it over the years, including Distribution Warehouse, including Great Wolf Lodge. Great Wolf Lodge that's just now opening up in Mohegan Sun. Yeah, looked here first at this site. So, every time I saw an opportunity for somebody that would maybe be a good fit there, I reached out and gave them all the data that I had. We do have some studies. I do have, different topographical maps, things like that. Give them the zoning, give them the information, and then, of course, promote the town and why they want to be here. I think the primary reason why, to this point, they've passed on it is two things. One is it is just a piece of raw land, so it's gonna take an enormous amount of investment for anybody that comes in there. And whether or not that investment is gonna be somehow offset by the town, it may require that. They may say, hey, we'll come here and we'll build and do all this, but you need to give us the land and not sell it to us. There could be all, and the other reason is the bigger reason, though, is the uncertainty of what does the town want it to be? And we're facing the same thing with IBM, frankly. The difference is it's not town-owned land. They're saying, what do you want it to be? What do you want it to,
Well,
you know?
and again, I
that
feel
goes
like the
back
only way
to-
we discover that is ready, shoot, aim. So I guess if maybe you're more vocal about the shoot part, about what's going on, maybe we could live with that. But, again, sitting on our hands and not hearing anything is the bigger problem, okay? Anyway, we've got other people, and I'm breaking my Connor rule. It's gonna be a longer meeting than a Michael's meeting, so let's go. But I think, I don't know, does anybody else have anything else to?
Well, I think what you're hearing broadly from this group is we want to light a fire. There's a crisis.
Right.
And there are opportunities to overcome that crisis. We can't be slow and lethargic. We can't be sitting on our hands. If there's a log jam, we got to take a bulldozer to it or dynamite, whatever's the appropriate tool, and move it out of the way so that we can make some things happen. Volpe Rosen's been a topic of conversation 3, 4, 5 Board of Finance meetings every year that I've been on Board of Finance, which is now 4 years. And we're talking about the same things, which is basically inactivity. Now's the time to start moving. And with IBM, yeah, there are some things we can't do yet. But that property is gonna become available.
Yeah.
And we want to turn that into a productive resource that benefits the town as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay. Anyway, I think you got the message.
I do, thank you.
And thank you. And again, thank you. I think all the first page stuff is really very appreciated too. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's see. What do we got next? Southbury Days.
Hello, my name is Brian Jones. I've been a resident in town for 47 years and a business owner for 40. I did not know that Kevin was going to be speaking before me, but I would just, I've had the opportunity, he and I were co-chairs of the 325th Anniversary Committee. We've served for the last 2 years on the Southbury Celebration Committee. I've been a member of the local business association for decades, and he is a valuable resource, not only for the business community, because we did not have a liaison with Town Hall, but I've seen him interact and bring lots of talent. So I did not know that I'd be following his presentation, but I will tell you, not only Kevin and the other people that serve in this town as employees are extremely dedicated. I have 3 or 4 of them on my Southbury Celebration Committee. They think outside the box, they're creative, and so I applaud them, but I also applaud the committees for doing their due diligence, say, what are you doing, how does it work, and questioning. So, thank you. By way of background, if it's okay, I've got some very good news because I have a request to actually reduce my budget. So now that I've got your attention, for those of you that don't know how it came about, it came about in 1998 when this town of Southbury was celebrating the 325th anniversary of the first settlers coming up from Stratford to what is all known as Old Woodbury. I was the president of the Southbury Historical Society, and Dottie Manville was my co-chair. And so in 1998, we put on, and so you see, so first off, we have history all around Southbury, okay? Many of you know it, but we could walk down Town Hall and point out outside this, that, and the other thing. So we went to the town and said, we got this big opportunity, we're celebrating our 325th, and folks, of what? Okay, well, the first settlers coming from Stratford in 1673. So we put on 23 programs over 5 days. It was exhausting. Yes, we did it as volunteers, and I probably needed to have my head examined for why we did that, but it was a great event, and we had a fireworks program. And people said, this is fabulous, can we do it again? So I knocked on Town Hall and I said, maybe we can find some money for it. And so that was the start of it in 1998, and then we rebranded it in 1999. So this was the 27th year that I've had the honor of being the chair, co-chair in many cases. And so the event has grown. We now have over 5,000 people, It's a multicultural event. We bring in youth, adult, it's the only multicultural event that we have in town. My kids started in strollers when they were 6 months old, and do the math, they're 27, okay? It's a way that people from out of town come and see. I didn't know, new people like, you're kidding, you guys put on a fireworks program? Where do I charge, where do I give my $10 for parking? There is none. This would be a great place to live, and it helps promote, since day one. Our major expenses now, and then in expanded years, so in 2024, and so we became one program of, was it 30? For those that are looking at the math, in 2026, we'll be celebrating. Our biggest costs are the fireworks. If we just do the fireworks, and if anybody that was here in 1998, fireworks, looked up, this is wonderful, there was no band, there was no music, there was actually no food. A 4-hour program, because it dessert if you arts and festival. So all those things are great. When I had to put the budget together earlier, our fireworks are sourced from an American-based company, but where do most fireworks come from? History. In the budget for that. Also, just so you're aware, we do 3-year budget. This happens to be a year in which, guess what? The 3 years is up, and we're coming up to a readjustment, okay? And so, I will tell you, at a very minimum, to do the same event that we did, we can go as low as 27, but I'll explain why I'd recommend to go with the 30. I need 24,000 just to do the fireworks and the sound stage and music. Yes, and I will never do it again, okay? And let me tell you why. You remember?
I do.
Okay, so I said, again, Steve, businesses kicked in personally. This is a townwide event. And I said, we will do this 6:30 tonight. I go on fire duty for the fire support. So if the town doesn't feel it's appreciative, then it'll go by the way of the dinosaur, okay? But it's a positive multicultural event. It allows people from outside to come in and see us. It's a community event. We don't charge for it, because then you're displacing folks. And if you charge, then guess what? Now I need security to be able to collect money, because there's exposure there. So it's free. Come, join. If you don't want to buy anything, that's fine. Sit in your picnic with your picnic basket and watch the show and talk to your friends. We also make it an event that nobody's being hawked, okay? We do charge the food vendors because we need commitment for them. So the food vendors, we generate about $1,800. That is not in our budget because that's actually a revenue on the other side, okay? Just by the way the town does things. So have we done it before? Yes. Would I ever do it again? No, I don't think it's really fair. For 5,000 people, it's $3 a person. You look at across town, everybody has to chip in 25 cents, okay, to have raised that amount of money. So can it be done? Yes. It'd be a lot of extra infrastructure.
Brian, have we ever looked
Sir.
at corporate sponsorship? For
Excuse
any
me?
of this stuff, have we looked at corporate sponsorship, like local banks or businesses to sponsor the fireworks or things like that? It is a great event. I've been there
Yep.
many years with my daughter. It's,
So we did in the year that we had to do the fundraising. So we had banks and businesses that threw in, and some of the financial institutions, like mine and others, threw in money for that. But at the end of the day, we also wanted to make sure that just because you're a big company, why should we be branding an event that's taking town resources and at the Southbury Training School on state property to be able to charge? So if you're doing it on private land, that would be one thing, but I think we run into somewhat of a disconnect. Just because somebody can come up with $5,000, why should we call it the Acme Widget Fireworks Program, when in fact, there are other town costs that go into it too? But could we? The answer is yes. Do I think it takes away? And then now we start to get into a marketing and, but it's all possible. There's just, I think, negative ramifications.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Have you considered letting Southbury businesses come in to be vendors? I know that we allow committees in town to do it, but have you considered Southbury artisans, Southbury cottage bakers, businesses in town to come in and be vendors, limited
And
only to Southbury?
And no, so, just so we're clear, This is not a festival, fair, or a vendor. It's a symbiotic relationship that we have with our food vendors, so everybody has an opportunity to be a food vendor. So there are local nonprofits, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Rotarians, things like that. Both political parties have sites. So anybody that wants to come and sell food that has the opportunity. The challenge that we have is the footprint of the event gives us only about 15 to 17 areas to be able to sell things. And if people are selling potted plants and other things like that, it's the people aren't coming to buy that. If they want to do that, there's lots of other things in town that they can do. People have said, we want food options. I don't want to bring a big picnic basket, so we have food trucks and we have food vendors. So anybody can be a food vendor, but they have to sell on-site consumable food items.
Respectfully, craft fairs are an enormous draw, and you only have to look at Arts and Eats that the Women's Club puts on to see that. So I actually disagree. I think that Southbury businesses being able to sell at that event not only promotes Southbury business and supports them, but it also gives Southbury Day, the Southbury celebration, an opportunity to charge vendors to collect more money to pay for this.
We don't have space, so I didn't make
It's
myself clear.
purely just the space that doesn't
it's-
allow us to do that.
So we've always had a challenge when you get 3,000 to 5,000 people in a square footage from running large events, you have to have certain distances. And we're constrained by the river, we're constrained, or the pond, we're constrained by Route 172, we're constrained by the boundaries of it. So if we had 6 acres that you could have a whole area dedicated to that, that might work. But if you've ever been at the event at 7:30 at night, the field is filled and they're actually bumping right up to where the food vendor area is. So it became an issue of, wait a second, if the first 18 people are selling arts and crafts and other things, people are like, I want food, I want coffee, I want items. So it's a limitation of that. Plus, a lot of those events run longer. And our event, fireworks have to be shot off at dusk, so it's where does it run? Okay, so, and the other issue that we'd have with that is it's a disconnect between, the town would be putting that money in another budget area, and I can't guarantee, I know year in and year out about how many food vendors. We fill that entire space, and I know it's about 1,800. And some people say, why don't you charge the food vendors more? The reality is that the food vendors only have 3 to 4 hours to sell. They have to be there 2 hours ahead for food inspection. So it's not the Bethlehem Fair where they're gonna pay X amount and be there for 8, 10 hours. They have a very limited time to sell, and it's a high congestion area. So there are opportunities, it's not the right space available to be able to do that.
Thank you.
In the interest of time, because we do have I think, a fixed cutoff, and we still got 3 more
Yeah.
groups. Tell us about your 30 and 27.
Sure. So to do the same shows we did last year, we need 27, okay? We know, we lost items in the town hall, in the Southbury Library when it flooded. We had items, the things you see behind you, the 350th, that comes out of our budget. So each year, we put things together. So we know, and historically, over the last 26 years, each year I put some things aside. Our signs need to be redone. Some of the engagement ones of, take pictures and things. We need to build that back up. So the 30 or the 27, Jack, is just to do the same show, okay? And we could do the same. Where would that extra 3,000? I need to be buying more fence because we want to be able to do some more kids programs, but we got to make that safer to be able to corral the kids into that area. We want more engagement. The last couple of years, we've had magicians, so we've had the library doing a reading group. We need a separate area, so we've already talked, and Kevin's on the committee too, of being able to have more programs for that to get people there a little bit earlier. And then the third item, it was along the youth activities, and then some signage. So if we don't do it this year, I'm gonna end up having a big spike in my request for the following year. So we try to even and put, like, some of the stuff that was lost at the library, we've been using the same things for 10, 12 years. And when it got lost, we didn't miss it, but you know what, we need to start building it back up. And then we twist the arms of all of our vendor, or the power station and fireworks folks, so we get excellent deals. So the reason why my budget can come down so much is now I was able to get firm estimates, and they were able to lock in the price for this year. I had to guess that some of these things would go up by 20%, and they didn't, thank goodness.
So it sounds like 30 now lets you do everything that you're planning on doing.
And
Your
then
strategy.
it allows us to build some of the safety issues that we really do need, that got lost, and will allow us to be ready for, and these things last for years and years. You know, we've been using EDC and those other signs and we use them for about 10 years, and then they need to be replaced.
And the 27 doesn't let you do some of that stuff.
Correct. It's
Basically makes it what you've been doing.
Right now, we're gonna go through the entire 25,509, which was the same amount we had for the last couple years. So
Okay.
we build those in there. The request to go to 27 just does the same show, because my hard costs went up, and the rest just allows us to backfill and be ready for the future.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Nope, thank you.
Respectfully submitted, and I thank you for what you're doing. Thank you, Brian. Have a good night.
Okay, actually, why don't we do the public works stuff together? Can we do like 7 and 9?
That sounds like a deal, Tom.
In 5 minutes?
Let's see if we could do 3. Yeah.
We should have done them first, my bad. But so why don't you go ahead?
Sure. We were asked to come in and talk about facilities progress with a new facilities team, also known as Inside Properties, over the last year. I just wanted to refresh the team of where we've come since last year. In our 24 and 5 budget cycle, DPW facilities cut about $100,000 from our contract service line, and about approximately $31,000 from our operating expense line. For the most part, these cuts related previously to outsourced custodial services and some outsourced facility maintenance. With your support, we were able to use that savings and build it into the salary lines, and eventually build out a facility team, which is going well at this point. I can tell you right now that the facility team is performing the work that was under these contracted service lines, so that's a win. Some of our additional goals for this new team when the custodial tasks are complete, meaning the things that we originally cut, are to increase the quality of services overall in our town buildings, having more than one full-time person in facilities for daily coverage and emergencies. Remember, this team only had one gentleman and one part-time custodial worker at that point in time. We want to take on the maintenance of our building envelopes, siding, roofing, windows, lighting. This was a little bit of a gray area for us in the past, but now we have confirmed workers in that sector. Managing utilities that serve our buildings. This is kind of spread across the team, but we're managing our utilities and our bills, whether that's natural gas, electricity, you name it. Contributing to town building infrastructure planning and project implementation, and identifying potential savings, performing work at a lower cost than outsourced contractors. Those are some of our original goals. The library didn't do us any favors. It definitely was a distraction, something that was unplanned, not sitting in operations or infrastructure projects just yet. My team has done a ton of work at the library. Not too much that I can show you because we had something forecasted for it. We didn't forecast it. So I expect us to continue to find efficiency gains over time, still have all the faith in the world that this was the right move. And we're always looking to boost the quality of the services we provide in these buildings. So a lot more to come. Just want to get that update out to the team.
Well, yeah, I think as I told you, the real question with this one was, the thought was, or at least the thought from some people was that, you know, we accepted the idea that you were going to have a team, right? But that was supposed to bring down the kind of, you know, the contracting kind of work. And either that was a misunderstanding, or there's something else going on, or,
I think that's still the goal. Like I said, the library hasn't helped us get too far ahead of that. I do have a long sheet with 24 items I'm not going to read right now of
Yeah.
trades work my team's completed instead of using a contractor. I'd be glad to, share that list in more detail with anyone who asks over time. But that is the goal. Really, if we take materials, for example, this team would allow us to avoid markups on materials that would normally be provided by a contractor. And also the hourly rate should be a little bit cheaper on the town than most licensed trades out there. Most licensed trades will come in between $60 and $250 an hour for some of the work that we're doing out there. So, Tom, I do see that work getting done, but I do see a lot of room for improvement and hopefully bringing in more wins for this facility budget
okay.
over time.
But again, I guess, the real question is sort of, the fourth, so I accept the top two lines, let's say. The fourth thing is about contractors, correct? Is that still contractors?
Yep, that's operating service contracts.
And that's going up 7%, even though all the rest is going up, right?
Right.
And that, I think that was the core of the question, at least it's sort of, either it's sort of a misunderstanding on Board of Finance part, that the reason why the top's going up is to make that one go down, or or something else is going on. Maybe, like you're saying, maybe it's just that you anticipate you're gonna need more contractors for the library, with the fix-up of the library.
Sure, fair enough. It's a $4,900 increase under the operating service contracts line. I went through each one of those lines with our facility manager, Al Russo. On each line, we had identified things that are changing as far as our costs through those contracts. Remember, you're not doing all your contract work from this line with in-house now. This is still work being done by contractors.
Okay, but that still went up, right?
Yes, it
So-
did.
And it went up because inflation and contractor kind of costs, or why,
There's a few dozen on here.
can we drill down into that line, please?
You don't have a staff member that services elevators?
Yeah. Hopefully someday. Yeah, you'll see an example there, contracted HVAC, town hall, looks like, we went from 12,800 to 14,000, and that's based on our facility manager's assessment on contracted HVAC work that needs to happen in town hall. Unfortunately, the notes we provide in the budget workshop don't make this, but we actually have a note for every single line change that we submit to you, and I'd be glad to share that with you at a later point.
Okay. Any individual questions about this?
Could you be pushing the contract services harder if we asked you to?
We can always challenge it, Jack. Absolutely, we can push it harder.
Okay.
But I guess to my point that I said before, the increase is it just about the cost of the contractors to do the same thing? Or is it more about
Little
new
bit of-
contractors, or is it about new work that needs to be done that you had to
A little bit of both. Buildings are aging, and a lot of this line, I believe, relates to the maintenance of these buildings. So as I look around at the heat pumps in this room, for example, they're not in the best shape. There's a lot of work that's needed around the buildings from a maintenance and infrastructure perspective.
Okay. All right, and I guess it's unfair to go year to year, but I mean, is this a trend, or is this something that is more maybe one, like if it's because of the library, right, it's more of like maybe a one-off yearly thing, but,
I wouldn't relate it specifically to the library. Remember, facilities runs every single building in town. All your historic buildings, PD, town hall, senior center, all your park buildings, you name it. It's a pretty endless list. And with that too, with employees does come the need for tools, additional fuel, things like that. And we're holding those things in this budget, which I feel is relatively humble.
Okay. Yeah, but, you know, again, okay, well, I mean, let's, go ahead.
Hauling,
What?
hauling,
Yeah, we're gonna get to hauling, just a second. I'm not done with this yet. One more time. Okay, let's go to the top thing again, so, right, so, all the bid on top, I guess overtime is kind of reflective of the fact that there was a lot of stuff going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, that 10,000 in the salaries there, I'm not even sure that every department actually shows salary changes, but overtime, yes, we also added overtime for the additional employees that we took on. But some of those salaries were mere hour adjustments that just actually needed small editing.
Okay. All right. Okay, great, thanks.
Welcome.
Okay, let's go on to the hauling bit.
Yeah, I'll take this one over again, too. Please note, our transfer station budget request increase this year is 0.14%. That's pretty close to flat, team. I'd like to celebrate the efforts of Matt and Tom on some successes you see there as that are in parentheses, especially driving accountability in the demolition and hauling line there. We were asked in the last meeting to share some more reasons why we're showing a $35,000 increase in the hauling line. I'd like to share a couple of those with you for now. The cost for tipping solid waste is up about 6%. Hauling solid waste is up about 2%. This accounts for about half of that 35,000 you're looking at, and that's due to contract. That's not a non-negotiable contract item through the Greater Bridgeport Solid Waste Interlocal Commission, which we're part of. So we're talking about the extra half of that, which is something we're in more control of. And first of all, team, we're flexible here before I say these things. One thing we are doing, we're anticipating some more flood debris coming in. As we drive around town, we see water courses with flood debris, private land with flood debris. We think a lot of people are gonna be picking up this debris this spring, and into the beginning of next fiscal year in the summertime. That's just an estimate. We think it's coming in. When we say this additional tonnage is actually only about 200, to put that into perspective, that's about 4 trucks of tonnage that we're anticipating. But we're holding that for that one reason of potential more debris from flood-related incidents. Another reason is the future of the food scrap program for us is unknown. Whether the town takes this program on or not, or it's discontinued and the product goes back to MSW, we could hold it either way. This line has enough in it with that 200-ton increase to adopt it, or if the program is canceled, 44 tons starts going back into the solid waste stream. That's a more upper-level conversation, but I'm just telling you what it costs to tip. The last one on here, one more reason for justifying that tonnage increase, is the potential for more transfer station users coming in because the private sector is increasing in pricing. There's a large portion of Southbury residents that have private sector curbside hauling services for recycling and solid waste. We do know for a fact that their prices are going up. So we're not anticipating, but we're at least preparing for a tonnage increase because private residents, we may see more permitted users in the future. So I hope that justifies why we're holding that increase in there, and Matt and I are here, Tom's here too. We're glad to answer any questions about all things transfer station.
Blake, I don't know if you have this answer, but you did mention the brief and the flood with people maybe cleaning up their private properties and everything. I know there was a date for set toward the end of the year where nobody would be charged for that. Would you know anybody that comes in the future that was affected by the flood? Are they gonna be charged by the town?
At this point, yes, the free run is over. The claim is in to the FEMA program at this point for the total tonnage we received. We don't have a free program continuing from this point on. We expect most of it to be in a black bag compactor type use from that point on.
And that also includes debris from the flood, like rocks, sticks, sediment, anything that, because
The
the
transfer
reason I'm
station-
asking is I've had people ask me, is there gonna be another date stipulated for the people that were affected with the flood, where the town will allow them to go in? And most of that stuff is just dumped at the top of the hill, so it's not really charged out.
They're all different. You can look on our website to see where different items land at the transfer station. Some should technically go to the demo and debris pile, or that demolition line. Some of it's solid waste heading to the compactor, and then some of the more natural products we tend to have a space for. We do a lot of recycling at the transfer station, so,
I guess it's
There's
more
a-
of a question for the first selectman then.
All right, so a couple things. So I guess I would have thought that a lot, that this year's number would be kind of bloated already because of the flood. That I would expect that you're gonna get less flood stuff next year than you got this year, right? So, I don't know, to me, sort of raising it based on the flood is a little bit funny. But as I've talked to you, I'm less concerned about that number and more concerned about, I guess, I've always been concerned that the transfer station is kind of what I feel like a free lunch scenario for dumping, okay? And whenever there's a free lunch, people are gonna take advantage of it. And so I guess I'm less concerned about, like, so for instance, when Woodbury went pay to throw, right, their transport stations come down, and I guess maybe you'd expect that, right? I don't think there's a lot of appetite to go pay to throw here, but at the same time, I hate the kind of free lunch kind of thought about it. And I'd love to see if we could put some effort to try, to give you that number, but put a lot of effort to come in below it, right? In whatever way we can, through monitoring, maybe through paying for stickers, through other techniques we can think of, and really put a concerted effort, which it seems like you guys did, which kudos on the other part, right? To try to bring this number down, really just try to put a concerted, so make it a kind of goal for next year to come in well below that number if we can.
that's always the goal. And we have some renovations coming up soon that are gonna help us with driving that accountability. We have a large transfer station wall replacement for more or less the retaining wall. Where you see along the dumpsters, our plans to actually put a shed up at that driver's side location right at entry to continue driving accountability, questioning people where their product's coming from, proof of permit, charging them appropriately, et cetera. So we're tracking with what you're saying 100%. As far as pay to throw, and as far as charging people for stickers, I think that's a conversation that's a little bit above our level. Do I think it would have an impact on how much solid waste you take in? Absolutely. But I think Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance should probably talk through that on their own.
Yeah, well, I just, even the pay for the stickers, whenever there's a free lunch, there's always people that are gonna arb it, right? Even if you had to pay for the stickers and you did better monitoring, I feel like it might really significantly help that number. And I'd really like that to make that a goal of next fiscal year.
Right, and data will help us too, team. I mean, we want to keep taking on data. There is a scenario where anybody with a permit has a right to use our transfer station. It does not limit how many times a day you can visit that transfer station or how many times a week you can visit that transfer station. There are users who are there a few times a day. and we're not opening your garbage bag to look what's in it. Does that make sense? So
No,
some
I-
of that we'll be able to tell over time. What kind of users do we really have here? Do we have a problem, or do we have just a few unique situations?
I totally agree, and I'd like to see if we could gather that information and start to know why these numbers are going up, really, better.
Understood.
Okay. Yeah.
So I disagree with the pay to, people are gonna take advantage of anything that you give away for free. But we don't wanna turn into Fairfield County, where we have a lot of land in this area and a lot of forest. We don't want people dumping mattresses and couches and everything else in this town because it's pay to play. It would turn into a disaster. Second of all, accolades to all of the public works people, library, everything you do. I came from Stratford. This town is nothing like what Stratford is. You do your due diligence. I appreciate everything you do. When you talk about that service area that you have went up $4,900, and it's not my place, maybe, you can tell me that, but every little line item was a little bit, $650 here and $46 here and $30. That's where you get the $49.01. So, I don't know, maybe it's nickeling and diming, but if you, Betsy, can you pull up that service contract section? The bottom one, yeah. If you look from last year to this year, the top line, what is that, $8? And then you go down, it's not one large item that's creating that $49.01. It's small things with cost of living going up and all.
Yeah,
It's
I
not,
guess that and this wasn't, again, this wasn't my personal impression, but I've had some people on the Board of Finance under the impression that hiring your team, right, would bring these numbers down, okay? Because you'd use less contractors.
but you
because-
use more material.
Well, I'm not,
I'm just
maybe-
saying, I'm just the
maybe
newbie looking at this.
if that's all material, fine, then tell me that. But, I'm not, it doesn't necessarily say material, does it?
No, I'm not saying it is material, but I'm saying if you're gonna do more work, it's gonna be more cost. Less work, you're gonna have less cost, so, I don't
Dan and
know.
I have had some positive conversations on this, and there's certainly a point to both perspectives. I think we agree this has the opportunity to be a savings for the town, but there's certainly an efficiency standard that needs to be managed throughout this process, because if we have a technician spend 3 days on a 1-day contracted services job, that may no longer be a savings, right? So, we're looking closely at that. We haven't forgotten that. We need to really make sure that that is in the best interest at all times, and that, one, we have to get through what we've cut out of that budget. That's first and foremost, the $130,000 we cut out of it last year. After that, though, we need to put these staff members into the right place to actually make an efficient gain on the town, for the town, I should say.
Okay. And back to the other thing, again, I think there's a lot, I feel there's a lot that can be done to try to bring that 263,000 down. And I do think it's a free lunch right now, right? And so I guess that's what I'd like to see, if we could even invest a little money or find a way to invest money to do better tracking of what's going through the transfer station.
That's probably a conversation that's outside of the scope of this meeting, though.
Yes, well, I got it, but I got a lot of Board of Selectmen people here, so I'm maybe preaching to I'm preaching on my own. But I mean, the bottom line is, the overall bottom line is we've got, a 5% plus budget. We can't do that. That's not sustainable over time. And so either we get, as a Board of Finance, we get nasty because we're not doing our job and start picking things out and say, no, do that, no, do that, cut that. Or, I guess maybe I can even swallow the 5% budget this year, but it's been 2 years now that the budget's been above, above inflation. So we can't have that as a trend. And at least as the Board of Finance, I'm not doing my job if I let that be a trend. And so we're trying to go through and pick out where we can, where we think that we could make improvements on this, either this year, and this one isn't so much this year, but maybe next year, right? Okay.
I know, Blake, you did talk about redoing that retaining wall. Is there any conversation on installing a scale, so we're actually charging these people that are bringing in bulk metal or debris or anything else appropriately?
The scale's been a conversation for a long time. Once again, backwards from this, there's an investment there, right? So we would have to figure out what the value proposition is there of actually having a scale. And then we also have limited space, Tim. We have a landfill situation where we can't just go construct things where we want. So we're really in a tight little spot down there where the only spot one would be feasible is down lower in that, tier one. But it's something I think we throw around every once in a while. Is it something we can accommodate over time?
Just so folks know, Blake's predecessor put together a proposal to add a scale, change the workflow up there, and do a lot of things, and the tag on that was $1 million. So, these things don't just happen.
Yeah, Tom, just let me go back again to the bigger picture. When I look at some of these numbers that are small in the scope of the entire budget, I look at it from the standpoint of not only the budget cost, but I look at it from the standpoint more so on what is it doing to the mill rate. Because as these costs go up, so to certain revenues go up. And I think Dan put together a very telling assessment that we saw that showed over the last 5 years, Dan, with the mill rate compared to inflation, okay? Over that 5 years, our mill rate actually increased less percentage-wise than the cost of living. So when we look at the expenditure side in and of itself, okay, we should look also at what the effect is. Because some of these things, and I look at it from the standpoint that these department managers know more about the nitty-gritty than I know. And what I focus on more is what is the result at the end, okay? And what has happened over the last 5 years with the change in people that have come in and made this place better, okay? No matter what has happened with differences each year, between what our tax mill rate was and what the cost of living is, because sometimes the cost of living goes up and it doesn't hit the town until the next year. I look at some of this stuff in the broader picture and I say, if we don't do some of these things, this is going to come back, as Blake said, and haunt us. And if you don't keep up with maintaining what we have, it's going to cost a hell of a lot more in the long run to fix it after it deteriorates further.
Hey, Tom, I'm not trying to rush anyone, but the Board of Selectmen has a meeting in this room at 7, so
Okay.
we only have
So let's get on with the rest. Okay, anyway, thanks,
6
Blake.
minutes to go over the next two departments.
Anyway, thanks, great, thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
I guess the question would be for the members of the Board of Finance, could we, the two remaining, could you guys provide questions to me and I can provide questions to them and get it back to you? Because I think we're just gonna run out of time,
Okay.
with the Board of Selectmen coming in, because we do have to change the room up
Okay,
as
what are the
well.
two?
It's, David from IT,
I
which
think-
is
well,
pretty
I think-
straightforward, and,
Yeah,
thanks, Blake.
yeah, thank you, thanks.
And Chris from the Police Department, but Chris is probably gonna be a broader discussion.
Yeah, that's
in
gonna
5
take, why don't we
minutes,
just
so-
reschedule that one for some other time,
Yep.
okay? I think yours is pretty quick, right? I'm sorry, we should have had you front and center, we should have been more, time.
13 minutes.
Well, we can do this, I think.
And there should be some time for some discussion.
Well, I think the whole issue here is just about the phones, isn't it?
Telephones.
It's
Very
about the
quick,
phones.
telephones.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
Let me get started. The phone system started out with Woodbury Telephone. That's how old our phone systems and all of our circuits are. So what's happened is over the years, as things have been canceled, the lines weren't turned off. So what we've done as part of the radio project, the Voice over IP project, and the latest project working on all the different circuits, we've identified that this 5 pages of circuits and phone numbers are no longer actually in use. The police department's changeover caused us to look at every single circuit because we had to work with the state to bring everything over and make everything work. And after we were all done and we hadn't even touched any of these circuits, we found that they're not even in use by the police department anymore. So that brings my 1 page that was left down to 1 phone number. Everything else is gonna be voice over IP. Now, every building in town has at least an alarm phone line. The cost of the phone lines used to be around $30 a piece. They're now at about $119 a piece. So we've talked to our alarm company and our elevator companies to find that we can bring that down to $40 a month using a cellular connection, and we don't have to worry about any safety problems with the phone lines going down and people not being able to reach. So with all of this, as of March 3rd, when we started turning things off, it looks like next year it'll be about $20,000 less. And we only just got that on March 3rd is when we started to figure that out. I will have an exact number probably in another couple of weeks, once we see what's still billed. The other issue was they were Centrex lines. So Centrex is like a bucket. So if you turn off, there's 18 lines in that bucket. If you turn off 17 of those lines, you still have to pay for the bucket on top of your phone charges. So every building had its own bucket. So those are now being turned off as well, and that's gonna save us a lot of the money.
Right, so I thought the main concern with the phones was that you under budgeted, but which is kind of a strange one, right? But, because it looks like, what was it, Dan? It looks like you're hitting.
We're at about $60,000 right now with 4.5 months to go.
And
Budget's only 67.
we don't want to under budget too much because then it gets messy in a whole different way. So
I'll have better numbers in about 2 weeks, so.
Okay.
Quick question, David, and sorry, I should have asked you earlier and I didn't. What do you think the reduction would be in this budget from $67,000 with the new telephone? And
We're
if you don't have
looking,
it, you can give it to me when you do have it.
$395 a month for alarm circuits, 130 for the pool, 160 for the transfer station. Let's see. Yeah, so I can't really give you a really good
Okay.
number, but I can give you the monthlies.
Well, it won't be $20,000 though. So.
No.
Okay.
No, we're not gonna, not this year. Next
it.
year is when
Perfect.
everything will start to
Okay,
happen.
Okay.
thanks.
All right. Do we have anything else besides the phones to talk about with?
That's it. No, we just some clarifications so we make sure we have the right number in there for next year because we don't want to under budget in a tight budget year.
Okay, great, thank you.
The only one we have left is Chief Grillo. And unfortunately, we are not gonna have enough time to speak with him, and have discussions, so,
Maybe we'll just
I'll
have-
reschedule him for another
Yeah, for
time.
some other meeting maybe.
Yep.
Okay. Do we need an official adjournment or not?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
We've been in this room half a dozen different times now over the last 3 or 4 weeks, listening to budget presentations. The budget presentations have been done thoroughly and professionally. It's as often our misunderstanding as not when there's a question about a specific line item justifying an increase or a decrease. But 5.7% is too high. I hear arguments that we're still dealing with spillover from the high inflation period, but I don't see evidence of that in the increases that are proposed in the budget. Couple percent, 3%, yes, but not 6%. 5.7, 5.7? 5.74. We've identified a few small items tonight, but as a couple people pointed out, we're not the experts. We're an oversight board. It's the department heads and the Board of Selectmen, and the first selectman for whom they work, that have the real understanding of what could be cut to make a more affordable budget. As a finance board member, I'm listening to the community, I'm looking at the numbers, and in my mind, a number of more like 3.7 increase is justifiable. That would be about a $500,000 reduction in the total municipal budget for the year. Is that about? Round numbers. So what I'd like to, my motion would be that we send the budget back to the Board of Selectmen and the first selectman and request that they trim the budget by $500,000. I think there are some sizable items that can be looked at, and perhaps there's a peanut butter spread approach to some of that $500,000. But they are much closer with their department heads to understand where those opportunities are or where the pain is felt if we make that cut. As a Board of Finance member, I think we need to challenge the town with a smaller number for the voters. So my motion is to send the budget back to the Board of Selectmen and the first selectman with a request for a $500,000 reduction to a 3.7%
Okay.
budget impact.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? Anybody on the Board of Finance or? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so what, 4? 4-2? Got that? Okay. So I guess the motion passes, right? Got that, Betsy?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Betsy.
yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to discuss tonight? Okay, let's adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.